Get this, Saudi Arabia is having a comedy festival this month. Really, Saudi Arabia. It's gonna be great. If you die on stage, you get 72 virgins. And Chappelle is performing. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would be cool to have Dave Chappelle speak and England might arrest him, I would have said, what are you smoking?
Here's the kicker, Yanni. Saudi Arabia is hosting a comedy festival this month. Yeah, you heard that right, Saudi Arabia. A country once infamous for silencing voices is now putting comedians on stage. Imagine this. If you bomb on stage instead of booze, you're promised 72 virgins. And the headliner? None other than Dave Chappelle. If you told me years ago that Saudi Arabia would welcome Chappelle while England might arrest him, I'd have said, what are you smoking?
That's the great irony. Flag burning is free speech, and free speech is one of the key things that makes America great. So now that I have you on my side on that issue, don't be a hypocrite and defend attacks on speech from the left, because you either get the concept or you don't. And sadly, a lot of people don't anymore.
That's the great irony of our times. Burning the American flag is free speech. Mocking authority is free speech. And yet, the same people who defend these rights are now attacking speech when it doesn't fit their narrative. You either believe in free speech or you don't. Sadly, too many people have become hypocrites, picking and choosing when it applies.
Who were never taught it by their derelict educational system. But also Lisa Cook. She's the Fed board member Trump is trying to fire for bullshit reasons, and they are bullshit. But when she tried to get another professor fired because he once, according to one student, was less than rapturous about Martin Luther King Day, no, she should know better. She said free speech should have its limits. Yes, it should, and does. And this comes nowhere close to them.
Bill Maher laid it out with surgical precision. The left loves to preach free speech like it's their sacred right. But step outside their carefully curated bubble and suddenly you're branded a bigot, a threat, or worse. Maher exposed this hypocrisy head-on, reminding us, speech isn't a privilege for one side. It's a universal right for...
Bad enough that Trump is attacking free speech from the right, throwing the Associated Press out of the press pool, calling reporters enemy of the people, threatening and suing networks simply because he doesn't like the coverage. This country can't become that. But it also can't become what the UK is now. A place where you get arrested for tweets, something that happens 12,000 times a year now in Britain. Last week, the Irish sitcom writer Graham Linehan, who's won an Emmy and 5 BAFTA awards, got off a plane at Heathrow and got arrested by 5 British cops. Not because he was selling drones to the Houthis, just because he's a crank who spends way too much time online ranting about gender ideology.
Lisa Cook's case shows the problem perfectly. She's a Fed board member Trump is trying to fire, but years back she allegedly pressured universities to silence professors who weren't enthusiastic enough about Martin Luther King Day. She once said free speech should have limits. But that's not education, that's indoctrination. A classroom is meant to spark debate, not enforce ideology. That's why some argue her firing is justified.
Which is an odd obsession for a comedian from across the pond, because if men weren't allowed to dress as women, British comedy wouldn't exist. There'd be absolutely nothing left of Shakespeare but the sonnets, and Monty Python movies would be 20 seconds long. But in the words of that great Brit, Ricky Gervais, if you don't believe in a person's right to say things that you might find grossly offensive, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. You shouldn't have to eat your words at the airport. The chicken Alfredo on the flight was bad enough.
But let's be fair. The right isn't innocent either. Trump has attacked free speech by banning reporters, calling the press the enemy of the people, and even threatening networks. That's dangerous too. Because America cannot turn into a place where journalists are silenced. But it also cannot become like Britain, where people get arrested for tweets. Last year, an Irish sitcom writer, Graham Linehan, was arrested by 5 cops at Heathrow for online rants about gender. Arrested for words.
Writing an anti-Israel op-ed in a student newspaper, which I found offensive, but I still would go to the mat for that person to be able to print it. And we can fight Trump on this because we have a First Amendment. England does not. And the fact that they don't, that's not a feature, that's a bug. And it's a bug that's going around Europe now. In Germany, a guy called a politician a Pimmel, which is the German word for dick, and it triggered a police raid. What a Pimmel move.
This is where the contrast is clear. In Britain, comedians risk arrest. In America, at least, we still have the First Amendment. Comedians like Chappelle or writers like J.K. Rowling may offend many, but that's the cost of freedom. Ricky Gervais said it best. If you don't believe in a person's right to say things you find offensive, then you don't believe in freedom of speech. You shouldn't be eating your words at the airport. The in-flight chicken Alfredo was bad enough.
For wearing a Halloween costume depicting the terrorist who bombed the Ariana Grande concert. Bad taste? Yeah, bad taste is the whole point of Halloween. This Scottish man was found guilty of hate speech for a YouTube video where he taught his pug to salute when he said Sieg Heil.
Sieg Heil. Sieg Heil.
Elon Musk watched it and said, I don't see it.
Freedom of speech isn't granted by governments, it's a God-given right. Once you allow one group to decide what can and can't be said, you've already abandoned democracy. Canceling voices doesn't defeat bad ideas, it breeds tyranny. You don't silence someone for being offensive, you debate them, challenge them, and win with stronger arguments.
This fucking dog. They're all wrong, and they all have the right to be wrong. Britain is now considering the so-called pub law. Okay, it's not just about pubs. It's a workplace bill aimed at preventing any kind of harassment in the workplace, including verbal remarks overheard. Okay, problem is, a pub is a workplace, so is a bookstore. Would a major chain like Waterstones risk hosting a book signing by a controversial author like J.K. Rowling? And pubs? People go to pubs for two reasons, to drink and to...
We've seen the cost of silencing dissent. From Rowling's backlash to Chappelle's boycotts, to comedians facing arrests, the pattern is clear. Authoritarianism hides behind the mask of tolerance. It punishes anyone who steps out of line. And when society normalizes censorship, freedom doesn't just disappear, it's stolen.
Are called the drunken cock. Any Brit will tell you the food is awful, the weather sucks, but at least you can call each other a cunt. And now that's gone? It's like making a rule at the dog park, no ass sniffing.
Across Europe, the madness is spreading. In Germany, a man called a politician a Pimmel, which means dick, and police raided his home. In Scotland, a man was convicted of hate speech for teaching his pug to do a Nazi salute as a joke. In Britain, a man faced 2 years in prison over a tasteless Halloween costume. Offensive? Sure. Criminal? Absolutely not. And that brings us full circle. If even Saudi Arabia, once a stronghold of censorship, is opening its doors to comedians like Chappelle, then Western democracies have no excuse to regress into authoritarian silence. Free speech is non-negotiable. It's not a luxury. It's survival. Because once you lose the right to speak freely, every other freedom collapses right after it. That's why protecting speech isn't just important, it's everything.